In this video, I will demonstrate Spectrum Protect Plus online services for Salesforce. Welcome. This is Rob Coventry. I'm with IBM Data Protection and Cyber Resilience. In my introductory presentation, I highlighted the value points that Spectrum Protect Plus online services for Salesforce delivers. These include speed to automated comprehensive Salesforce backup with end-to-end encryption and bring your own storage option to deliver true air gap. Rapid, regular restore both in place and out of place. Compare tools that help assure precise data recovery. Automated and manual offline exports. Delegated administration. Automated data monitoring alerting. Data cleanup. Safer sandbox seating. And a powerful dashboard for visibility and control. In this demonstration, I'll walk through 4 mini demos to illustrate those valuable capabilities. Restore records from user error, restore metadata and records from an administrative change, sandbox seeding with anonymization, and a final walkthrough of our dashboard, data monitoring, export, data cleanup, and speed to automated backup. Let's see how SPPOS can restore records from common user mistakes. At our recent Vegas client conference, we ran a campaign that created quite a few significant opportunities. Unfortunately, 3 of those opportunity records got deleted by the seller who thought they were bogus. So let's use SPPOS for Salesforce to identify and recover those records using the Compare tool. Let's select the Compare tab. I could go in and use the Compare object across the differences from 2 different backup jobs, but in this case, because the records were recently deleted, I know roughly when they were deleted, so I can compare the objects that are in production to a recent backup. In order to do that, I'm going to launch the Compare tool, select the date where I know roughly prior to the user deleting those records, hit OK, identify the backup that I want to do. In this particular case, I happen to know the objects that I'm trying to restore. As you can see, there's lots and lots of different objects that I can restore from, but I'm going to go and pick the opportunity object and run that compare. And you can see that it has identified those 3 records. By clicking on the -3, I can inspect the deleted records. And I happen to know they were 2.5, 4.5, and 1.5 million opportunities. There's the campaign ID that I can check against. I've got some basic description that I can see directly here. And as I scroll over, I get more detail. For instance, I know who the competitors were, and I know that the name of the opportunities. One of them in particular was University of Arizona. So I know that those are definitely the records that I want to restore. I could download that and inspect that in a spreadsheet if I wanted to. What I want to do is restore those records by clicking here. I need to select all the records that I want to restore them using standard options. Because in all likelihood, these records have already triggered flows and workflows and rules and validation, I'm simply going to deselect that. That'll speed up our restore. Since I know they're gone, I'm not going to worry about overwriting. If there are any child records, I'll go ahead and go 3 levels deep. I could go several levels deep, as you can see, and I can choose not to restore audit fields. So I'll run that. And then I can quickly see my restore will be queued up and it's restored. I can go back then to Salesforce and see that my records are indeed recovered. Now, if we hit the refresh on the Sales Console of Salesforce, the magic should show that our 2.5, 1.5, and $4.5 million opportunities have indeed been restored. Now let's see how SPPOS can help Salesforce administrators protect from errors. Before I make any changes, I'm going to trigger an on-demand backup. So I know that I have a snapshot of the latest data ready to recover and maximizing my recovery point. I'll take a note of the start time too, so that I can remember which backup in my history I need to look for. I'll let that run and go over here to Salesforce and make my changes. I've been instructed by the sales organization that they want to change the client segmentation from commercial, corporate and SMB to direct, growth, and blended. So I'll make that change and come back and show you the after. Okay, I've made my change, and if I hit the refresh, what I'll see is the records have all been changed from corporate, commercial, and SMB to direct, growth, and blended. This change affects metadata and records of the account object. To recover, I know I'm going to need to recover metadata first and then the account records, 2 steps. I'm not a Salesforce expert, so I'm going to run a backup after the changes so that I can identify that. So I already queued that backup up. And I'm going to go into the compare and compare metadata against those 2 backups, the before and the after. So I'll select the backup before I made the change at 9:49 and then run a compare against the backup I ran after the change, and then go in and look at that comparison. And as you can see here, I've got in my center column here, I can identify whatever objects have changed. Now I know that I only made 1 change, and in this case I'm just simply doing this to be able to start to do the comparison side by side. And this is one of the nice things that SPPOS does for me, is it gives me a list of and highlights all the changes that I made, the additions in green, changes in yellow or orange, and deletes in red. So as you can see, it identifies the corporate to direct, commercial to growth, and SMB to blended. That's the change that I was looking for, and definitely is on the account metadata object that I want to restore. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to queue up a restore of metadata, and I will pick the restore from that 9:49 backup, and I'm going to pick a custom object from the account and run that restore. Now I need to restore the data. You would think that you're going to restore a record, but basically a restore record only restores a single record, just like restoring fields restores a single field. For this demonstration, I need to restore objects, and I'm going to pick that same restore at 9:49, select the objects account. I'll do a standard restore. As before, we'll deactivate triggers and validation rules since all of those would have fired previously. All we're just doing is putting things back the way it was. And we need to make sure we overwrite, because remember, there is a value in there, so we need to overwrite those records. Now, if I needed to go deep in terms of child records, I could do that too, but that shouldn't be a problem here. I'm not going to worry about audit fields, and I definitely do not want to anonymize at this point. So I'll run that restore. That should get queued up, and when it's completed, I'll come back to inspect the results. Now, as you can see, all of my commercial, SMB, and corporate client segments have been returned, as well as the metadata pick list options. I have a Sandbox instance that's currently empty. You'll notice that if I go to the Sales Console and check Accounts, Contacts, Opportunities, Campaigns, even if I go over to the Service Console and check Cases, it's completely empty. In this case, I'm playing the role of a developer. When I log into SPPOS for Salesforce, notice I only see one application tile. When we have more than one org, or in this case, one org and a sandbox, we will see the orgs here in the top left pull downs. I see SPPOS, which is my production org, and SPPOS Sandbox, obviously my sandbox. I'm going to leave that selected as SPPOS, my production org. Now let's select the Sandbox Seating tab. I already have a Sandbox Seating template that we want to inspect so that we can see what it's about to populate. The destination organization is already pre-selected for me, IBM SPPOS Sandbox, which is correct. It has a user mapping which will change the user settings for the records that it populates. These are the objects that are going to be populated: account, case, campaign, opportunity, and contact. It's going to deactivate triggers and validation rules to speed things up. Doesn't need to delete things because I have an empty Salesforce org, as you noticed. And we're going to select to overwrite just in case there is anything that it needs to. We'll pick to go ahead and also recover the first hierarchy of the parent. We'll seed child objects 3 deep. Notice anonymization is selected, and the template's already been set up for me. These types of options, by the way, can be enabled depending on your preferences. Let's run this seeding. Back out here and run the seed and come back to inspect the results in Salesforce when it's done. Okay, my seeding is completed. Now I can go back to Salesforce and inspect the result. And what we'll see is we have our accounts restored, and you'll notice that we've got a bunch of made up names with made up phone numbers. If we go to contacts, we've got a bunch of made up contact names that are not the same. These are all made up IDs and names. The opportunities have been restored. And you'll notice I had a anonymization rule that was set to opportunity name removed so that we know that that indeed has been anonymized. Campaigns have been restored for testing purposes. If we go to our Service Console, we will also see that we've got a bunch of cases that have been also anonymized. We've seen how SPPOS for Salesforce can protect against user errors, administrator errors, and how it supports Sandbox seeding. Let's take a quick tour through a few more things worth highlighting, starting with the dashboard. Upon entry, we have immediate awareness of user activities that we can see here on the right, Salesforce API usage on the bottom left, object changes in the middle, that, by the way, change over time, as well as backup status over time, this number of backups. So as I click each date, or each particular backup, I can see the account number, the object changes that occur on each of those backups. Let's go to the Data Cleanup tab, where we can search for and remove records like contacts for GDPR right to be forgotten compliance. I've already got a data cleanup template set up. So I'll go straight in and search for, I could use a CSV, but in this case, I'll specifically search for a keyword for a contact, and I'll search for Holloway. And yes, that's the contact that wants to be forgotten. If I hit next, that contact will be removed from our backup data forever. Now, if we go to the History tab, we see a history of all of the activities in SPPOS for Salesforce, from backups to restores to Sandbox seedings historically. From here, we can export a report to give us a specific detailed breakdown of everything that went on for that activity. I can export the data that was backed up to a CSV for external purposes, and I can export the metadata, so I have a combination of both. Now, if I want to, I can schedule an export on a regular basis, going into here, and then specify what my target storage is, give it all the particulars to get to that, and schedule that on a weekly or monthly basis. Now let's talk a little bit about monitoring data events. I've already set up a data monitoring set of rules so that anytime I remove more than 5 accounts, remove more than 5 cases, add more than a certain number of 50 contacts, then I'm going to get an automated alert. You can set these rules to any number of rules that you want based on the objects in your Salesforce system. Let me wrap up by describing how SPPOS makes speed to automated backup. You'll notice that SPPOS is already set up to the default, which is 4 times every day. We're backing everything up. And if I go back to the SPPOS portal, I'll point out that setup is as simple as pointing an app profile that you see here. I've got 2 app profiles to the org that you want to protect. In my case, I've got one org for my production Salesforce and one org for my Salesforce Sandbox. It's quite simple. During this video, I've shown you how SPPOS for Salesforce delivers valuable data protection capabilities in scenarios every Salesforce administrator needs. To see for yourself, I invite you to register for our free 30-day trial here at ibm.biz/try SPPOS for Salesforce. Thank you for joining me during this video. We'll see you soon.